So now we're going to talk about some predictors that are used that are, we'll say, uncertainty, which is to say that they're not as good at being quantified. You can't quantify these predictors quite as well as the previous ones we just talked about. Like years of experience equals years of experience. Okay, so here we go. Interviews are very popular, right? Look, 80 to 90% of organizations do interviews. And again, it's designed to predict future performance based on response. I, I don't know about that. So the actual employers' beliefs about the validity of an interview does not equal the truth of the validity of interviews. All right, they can be made better. They can be, and they do add value to the selection process. But they are kind of expensive. They're time consuming. Maybe they're not the best thing to add. I mean, it's pretty much standard that everybody does one, but it's not necessarily a good one. Okay? Because there's so many things that can influence the interview process. Where you put the information, where you put the questions, stereotypes, biases, similarities between the interviewer and the interviewee. And I mean, even the interview process is really a function of who came before you. Because there was some interesting, I heard of this one where if there was 4 people before you and they had a relatively stinky interview, you get a bonus because it's like the gambler's fallacy. If there was 4 bad ones, it's about time for a good one. And so if you followed some good ones, then it's time for a bad one. It's like crazy, right? So did I not say there was uncertainty around the process? Another very, very commonly used technique is bringing up biographical information on an application form, right? I'm sure you've all seen application forms. They're going to ask years and etc. I don't know. I guess they are potentially useful as a first line of screening, a first line to just kind of chop off. Okay, these people shouldn't even be considered. But other than that, I mean, come on, they got things like hobbies and interests, and that's not, again, the strong interest inventory is perfectly valid, but these are not quantified in this way, and they're not being looked at by people that are qualified to really interpret the value of them. That's not to say these don't have potential value, but they're just not being used properly in most cases. What's perhaps more relevant is something like an assessment center. And an assessment center would be, and usually for very, very large organizations, but you see what's going to happen is there's going to be multiple raters. They're going to evaluate the applicants, and it's going to be a standardized set of predictors, kind of put a larger package together. Obviously, this is, 2 to 3 days. You're making a major commitment here, right? You are definitely making a major commitment, so make sure you can. Okay. Letters of recommendation. They tend to be lenient. And it's like, no matter how bad you are, you're going to find at least one person that likes you, right? And who are you going to ask? The one person. So you tend to write these things. And people that write the letters, they're kind of nervous about being sued for libel or losing a relationship or something. Letters of recommendation have even been such that one organization has a crappy employee, and so they write a really good letter of recommendation to get the crappy employee out of their company. It can happen, okay? And so it's fraught with a lot of problems. I write many letters of reference, many letters of reference. It is what it is. Okay. Grades, course grades. This is interesting. Grade GPA will predict who is offered a job, but not necessarily who will be successful. GPA predicts who's going to be successful early in the job, not necessarily a year or two later. But college GPA is predictive only in the, well, most likely in the sense that it is associated with motivation, conscientiousness, and stuff. And so if you are motivated and conscientious enough to get a high GPA, you'll probably be motivated and conscientious enough to work hard at your job. So it's kind of that kind of a approach. Here's one that I just have a hard time getting on board with, but emotional intelligence. I guess depending on the job, of course, but your ability to express, understand other people's emotions, and the idea is it's supposed to lead to collegiality for all, other larger things, but collegiality kinds of things, and so I don't know. Let's just say that emotional intelligence has just invaded the literature. Has it invaded the literature because it really is that important as a predictor, or is it a fad? Is it just people have jumped on board the emotional intelligence wagon? 20 years from now, maybe we're just going to say poo-poo, right? Who knows? We'll put a pause on that one, okay? Come back in a couple of years and we'll see. Situational judgment tests are, again, an attempt to predict future behavior by putting somebody in a hypothetical situation. How would you handle a situation in which your employee came to you and complained that they were being discriminated by another employee? How would you handle it? Okay, and so as long as you have job-related questions, you can perhaps get at somebody's ability to make good, reasonable judgments. Okay. Integrity tests. Yeah, I took an integrity test just one time when I was trying to get a job at a gas station at one time when I was in college. And they gave me this integrity test, and I know why they do this. I do know why they do this, because one of the biggest problems in a job like gas station attendance is your own employees robbing you. You don't have to worry necessarily about getting stuck up by a criminal. I mean, a robber. It's your employee that takes from you. And so these things have questions like, have you ever stolen anything from a previous employer? And it's like, well, the answer is supposed to be no, but everybody knows you swiped a stapler or something, right? And so, it's like, what's the correct answer? Yes, then you're a bad person that steals stuff. No, now we know you're a liar because everybody steals things. I don't know exactly what they want from it. So, polygraphs. Woo, polygraphs. I'd be very careful if I were an HR manager and somebody suggested we use a polygraph for selection decisions. I might just say, no, thank you. I'd rather not end up in a court of law getting sued for discrimination. So they are used by the national government for national security screening to make sure people are okay? Now, I'll leave that up to you to explore why polygraph tests are a load of shit, okay? It's on you. Credit rating. This is an interesting measure because, again, when we talked about when you are going to make a selection decision, you ought to use multiple predictors. And each predictor that you measure costs you more and more money. But sometimes predictors are cheap. They don't cost very much money. Credit rating, it doesn't cost very much money. It's pretty quick. And so the logic is somewhat similar to the GPA thing, that people with a high credit rating tend to be more successful on jobs because in order to have a high credit rating, you often have to exhibit skills such as motivation and diligence and conscientiousness, the same skill set which makes you successful at your job. So it is controversial because people can have a low credit rating for a variety of reasons that are beyond their control. So it's definitely less than perfect. Drug and alcohol testing. Yeah, got some false positive problems, people that test positive but aren't. Um, Look at this. I like this. 5,500 applicants for postal positions given drug tests after 15 months, and new employees who had tested positive for drugs at the time of hire had an absenteeism rate almost 60% higher than those that had tested negative. So there is something to be said about this. Past behavior predicts future behavior, right? It's just kind of goes. Potential legal issues involved. Yeah, it's a problem. Social media posts have been used for predicting. I'm not quite sure how they quantify, which is why social media ends up in this topic or this area on uncertain predictors. And so it's, again, cheap. And I guess if somebody showed incredibly bad judgment online, then who knows moving forward if they'll show incredibly bad judgment. Okay, so who knows. And then this last one here, I thought it was a joke when I found it. I thought somebody was pulling he's got it. Was it April Fool's Day? Right? Graphology. Now, thank God this is in Europe more than the United States, but they're gonna analyze your handwriting. All right, and they're gonna look at the loops and the swirls, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, this person has exactly this guy." I don't know what it is. I challenge you to look that one up. Okay, I don't know about the validity of that. Okay. All right, so that's what we got. And so in the next module, we'll move forward and we'll start